Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me so much pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of India Habitat Center and Professor Benoy K Behl. Today's talk is the 37th in his monthly series, Glimpses of Culture. From 2001 till 2020, when the last Limca Book of Records was published, Professor Behl was each year given the record for being the most traveled photographer and art historian. For decades, he traveled to all corners of the country, often spending just one night at each location. Therefore, despite the vastness of the corpus of surviving Indian art, a journey through art history with him takes us to the numerous places of significance, including those which are not well known to tourists. Many are not aware of the beauty and importance of the many early temples in Bhubaneswar and Khichen. These display the graceful and sensitive work of the early artists of Odisha. In the last few months, he has taken us to the earliest Indian art in the Indus Valley and Maurya periods. He also took us to the philosophic fundamentals of this art tradition, which were formulated by the 2nd century BCE. Today, he takes us to the awe-inspiring colossal statue of Gomateshwara at Shravanabelagola and to the exquisite early temples of Odisha. Ladies and gentlemen, Benoy K Behl speaks to us today on celebration of the divine. Over to him, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sujata Chatterji. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In my many journeys repeatedly to so many corners of the Indian subcontinent, the first thing that struck me was the enormous wealth of the many monuments and art surviving in this subcontinent. There is so much surviving that it staggers the mind. There would have been a time when practically every hilltop in this country had on it a stupa or a temple. For the people, it seems, were preoccupied with that which was beyond the material, beyond their day-to-day concerns, besides the profit-making and other opportunities with which people remain sometimes so occupied. The people in this land in the ancient period were definitely occupied with that which was more, that which was beyond all this. And truly, it's amazing. I mean, such a huge country, and even today, when you travel through a state like Madhya Pradesh or a state like Andhra Pradesh, there are so many hilltops that have 3rd century BCE stupas. It's a corpus of monuments and art which is truly amazing. The other thing which strikes one as you travel across this country is that in practically any period of time, there is a huge similarity between the styles of art and presentation, which is happening in different parts of the subcontinent. At any given point in time, the same is happening everywhere. And that is truly amazing. There was a sharing of styles, there was a sharing of thinking, which right since the ancient period was enormous. It's a wonder really to think about it. If something was happening in near Kumari, let us say in the 8th century, at almost the same time it was happening in Kashmir. It is truly amazing to see this wealth of the sharing of ideas which existed. So we have seen that in the early period it was stupas, Buddhist and Jain, which were being made in a prolific manner. We then saw that it was great cave temples which were hewn out of the mountain, a wonderful tradition which carried on for about 12 or 1300 years. And by the end of that period, towards the end of the period, by in fact about the 8th century, these cave temples became stupendous, miraculous, large edifices carved out of the mountain, carved inside and out, multi-storied structures. And yes, while such was happening in Tamil Nadu at the Kalagomalai temple, cave temple, the same was happening in an even more colossal way at Ellora, and the same was happening in another remarkable way at Masroor in Himachal Pradesh. In the meantime, particularly from the 5th century, temples began to be made across the land. And by the time we reach the 8th century and beyond that, the temples became very large. You see, in the early period, temples were small. They did not project themselves. They were not meant to be seen from a long distance. They were places that the worshipper came to lose himself, came to lose his preoccupation with himself and his desires. And he came to gain true knowledge of the divinity that was inside him. And these temples were small and were made, and their deities were made for a very personalized experience for the devotee. Now, by the time we reach the beginning of the medieval period, in the 7th, 8th century, temples began to be patronized by kings. And by the time we reach the 8th century, and even more by the time we reach the 10th century, the temples became large. They could be seen from a long distance, for the temples now proclaimed not only the call of divinity, but they began to proclaim the grandeur of the king who was behind the project, king who sponsored the making of these temples. And these are events which took place in all corners of the country practically simultaneously. And yet, while similar things happened, there is a cultural difference of each region. And today you're going to see the early temples of Odisha, and you're going to see the sublime, gentle, sensitive sculpture which took place here. A quality which you might notice in any case, even about the people of Odisha. And the same qualities have been seen in their early temples onwards, made during the rule of the Ganga dynasty. And while we are seeing these, we will also take a look at the Western Ganga dynasty and the great monument which they made at Shravanabelagola in Karnataka. So, ladies and gentlemen, my many thanks to India Habitat Center for this yet one more opportunity to share this treasure of art with all of you. My many thanks again to Doordarshan for being there to have sponsored such serious, such deeply researched work which is not meant to be entertaining at all, quite unlike modern day television networks. Doordarshan has truly lived up to its role as a public broadcaster, and over the years has done a remarkable job of funding these films. My many thanks to Sujata Chatterji, who makes all that I do possible. And I will now request Sunil to please run the film. Thank you very much.
After over 1,000 years of rock-cut shrines in India, structural stone temples in grand and developed styles were made by the 8th century. The southern form was seen in Tamil Nadu under the Pallavas. Under the early western Chalukyas, both southern and northern forms were seen at Pattadakkal and Alampur. In the meantime, further northeast, the land of present-day Odisha witnessed prolific temple building by the 7th and 8th centuries. The region around Bhubaneswar had been a great centre of religious activity since early times. There are edicts of Emperor Ashoka of the 3rd and Jaina caves of the 2nd century BC. The oldest surviving structural temples here are of the 7th century, of the Chandragupta group. The temples are dedicated to Shiva and are of the Pashupata sect, who followed the teachings of Lakulisha. The temple is where the unmanifest eternal is given a form. The devotee has here a representation to meditate upon, so as to awaken qualities within himself. Qualities which will take him on the path of realization. The outer surface of the temple presents the many aspects of the deity within. It also presents images of the world of creation around us and of the joyous realization of the divinity which is in all that there is.
One of the fascinating parts of studying temple sculpture is to understand it within its architectural context, where it not only has the meaning of the piece itself, but it has the larger meaning of the entire complex statement that the temple is making about the universe.
The doorway of the temple is given special attention. Here we leave the world of outward forms to enter the sacred interior. Doorways here continue the richly foliated designs seen from the 5th century during the Gupta period. Themes and an Odissan style are established, which continue in Hindu and Buddhist monuments in the centuries to come. Shiva is seen in his many forms. A well-preserved temple of the 7th or 8th century is the Parshurameshwara, also of the Pashupata sect. All Indian temples are made according to norms and proportions, which are carefully laid down. Here in Odisha, we are fortunate that texts have survived which give distinctive names, descriptions, proportions, and measurements of the different sections of the temples. Odisha is also a rare place where the traditions and canons have been passed on from father to son among a few surviving families of sthapatis or builders and artists. The temple is made in 2 parts. The tower is called Dyul in Odisha and the hall is called a Jagmohan. The Parshurameshwara temple faces west and its Dyul is about 40 feet high. The walls of both the Dyul and the Jagmohan are lavishly sculpted with architectural motifs and a profusion of figures. The most repeated form is the horseshoe shape, coming since the earliest times from the large windows of the Chaityagrihas. These frame figures of animals, humans, and divinities. The temple represents the expanding form of the deity. From the dark interior of the sanctum, Shiva is now seen in many manifestations. To understand the temple, we must always remember that all these deities are an embodiment of the eternal, which is formless and which is within each of us. These are a means to fix our thoughts and to help us on the path towards the truth. Central projections on 3 sides of the tower contain the images most closely related to Shiva. These include his sons Ganesha and Kartikeya, who occupies the niche on the east. The peacock which he rides is seen below, killing a snake, as peacocks are known to do. The lintel above the niche depicts the marriage of Shiva and Parvati. The Mukteshwara temple in Bhubaneswar of the 10th century marks many developments over the structures of the past. It is small, with a dual or tower less than 35 feet high. However, it is acclaimed as a gem of Odisha architecture and is richly carved. We see here Nagas and Naganis, with their long serpent tails coiled around pilasters on which they are made. This is one of the favorite themes of the Odisha sculptors and rarely seen in any other part of India. The roof of the Jagmohan or hall has by now taken on the Pidha shape, which was to become typical in this region. Myths of Lord Shiva and the tales of the victory of knowledge over the evil of ignorance abound on the temple walls. There is also the all-pervasive sense of joy which fills the depictions. The sculptures include a fine figure of Nataraja, Shiva in his cosmic dance. Warriors, both men and women, mounted on a lion or griffin are made, often trampling an elephant. The Torana entrance is first seen here in this region and has exquisite carvings upon it. On the upper part of the dual appears an elaborately decorated ornament of Odishan architecture, the bho. It consists of a Chaitya arch with a Kirti Mukha above. The Raja Rani temple was built around 1000 AD. The Jagmohan has a Pidha roof in many layers in the established Odisha style. However, the dual or tower has many clusters of the tower shape built around it. This gives it the appearance of a mountain. It is similar to the temples which were developing in central India at this time. The entrance to the Jagmohan has marvelous depictions of a Naga and Nagini created around pilasters. These represent the abundance as well as the protective forces of nature and are a theme seen in Indian art since earliest times. The dual of the temple is richly carved. There are numerous images of beautiful maidens. Along with the Nagas, ancient Indian art of all faiths had always depicted yakshas and yakshis, representing the creative forces of nature. These are now seen on Odishan temples in the form of Alasya Kanyas, or languorous maidens who are made in all parts of the temple. The text of the Shilpa Prakasha on temple building states that these are indispensable in the making of a temple. It describes 16 types of such beautiful young girls to be made. Popular themes include a maiden pulling down the branch of a tree, which is similar to the Shala Bhanjika of ancient times. Others include her removing an anklet or holding a pet bird. These figures embody the creative impulses of the natural world, which ensure the continuance of life. Corner projections of the Dyol have finely made Dikpalas, the deities who are the lords of different directions. Agni, who represents fire, is seen with the ram upon which he rides. Yama, the lord of death, is seen with a noose and his buffalo. There is a very fine representation of Varuna. The Brahmeshwara temple of the 11th century is made in the typical Odisha style. It is dedicated to Shiva and is made in the Panchyatna form with 4 smaller shrines around the main one. The sculpture is finely made and richly covers the surface of the temple. Alasya Kanyas remind us of the joy of creation around us, and divinities convey the essence of grace which underlies it all. The Lingaraja temple of the 12th century marks a high point in the tradition of temple building in Odisha. The temple is dedicated to Shiva and continues to be in worship till today. The Dyol rises to about 150 feet. The balance and proportions of the various parts of the temple and the elegance of its surface treatment make it one of the crowning achievements of the Odishan architect. The sculptures on the temple blend perfectly with the lines of its architecture, and the effect is majestic. A subsidiary shrine in the compound is dedicated to Parvati. It is probably of the 13th century and is richly carved. At Khiching, in what is today a very remote northeast part of Odisha, stands the reconstructed Khichkeshwari temple. It is originally of the 7th or 8th century and was restored in the early 20th century by the local Raja. While the work was done in the traditional manner, using an earthen ramp to take up large blocks of stone, there were no references to determine the original shape of the temple. Therefore, the temple structure is disproportionate. However, the high quality of the sculpture on this temple and others in the area testifies to the fact that this was an important center of culture. 2 images of Mahishasur-Mardani on the north of the temple are of a very fine quality. Durga is seen killing the buffalo demon, which signifies the victory of knowledge over ignorance. The power in the images and the fine features display an excellent quality of art. The Chaitya arches. the Mithuna figures, Nagas and Naganis, and the foliated carvings are similar to the Bhubaneswar temples. The structure is made of blue, fine-grained chlorite, which is a stone which endures and is conducive to fine carving. With the emergence of structural temples in the plains of the Ganga from the 5th century onwards, we see similar themes and motifs in North, Central and Eastern India. Yet, these are transformed by hands which bring the full richness of the local idiom. Here in the 10th and 11th centuries in Odisha, we see subjects of the art which are very similar to those of this period in central India at Khajuraho. However, the sculpture is unmistakably of Odisha. It is this colour of the local culture in every region of India which makes the tapestry of Indian art infinitely rich and varied. In the meantime, the Western Ganga dynasty ruled in the region of present-day Karnataka. They were most prominent in the 10th century and are known for their monuments at the Jaina holy site of Shravanabelagola. Chandragupta was the great Maurya king of the 4th century BC and the grandfather of Emperor Ashoka. In his later years, he is believed to have renounced his worldly life and become a Jaina ascetic. It is here at Shravanabelagola that he is believed to have come to give up the bindings of his mortal body. In 982, Chamunda Raya, minister of King Rajamalla IV, made an impressive temple which is commonly known as Chamunda Raya Basti. The granite temple is southern in form. In 983, the minister dedicated a colossal statue of Bahubali, also known as Gomateshwara. This is about 60 feet high and is the largest freestanding monolithic sculpture of the world.
This is Shravanabelagola image is about 57 feet high, and it is a monolith. And that's why it has a unique place in the history of the world, or the art of the world. As a monolith, carved in situ, and with that kind of beauty and symmetry added to it, I do not think you find similar kind of parallels anywhere in the world.
The early art of the Jainas was similar to that of the Buddhists, as we saw at stupa sites of the Kushana period. By now, the Jaina style had developed in a different direction. The depictions appear formal and stylized rather than naturalistic. They convey a spirit of extreme detachment from the material and sensual world. Their objective is to take us to a rarefied realm of pure objectivity. Gomateshwara was the son of Rishabhnatha, the first Jaina Tirthankara, or victor over the fear of death. He stood for so long in meditation that creepers and anthills grew around his unmoving body. He stands in the specific position of meditation known as Kayutsarga. The limbs are held straight and the arms do not touch the body. The slightest smile is upon his face. It conveys an inner tranquility without disturbing the concentration within which the figure conveys. The Jainas believe, as do Buddhists and Hindus, in samsara. This is the illusory nature of the world of separated material forms around us. We need to lift the veils of the illusion to see the unity of creation. There is a great clarity of vision and intellectual discipline with which Jaina teachings focus upon the path towards realization. Renunciation of attachments to the material world is a prime consideration in the path towards salvation.
It's not only giving up the land or ornaments or the attachment to the family, or taking off one's own clothes and becoming naked, so that is to symbolize that he is no longer needing anything. But the attachment within the mind, within the soul, within what you call thought, that was very, very important. So Bahubali, in order to attain this, he mortifies his body. Mortification is one aspect of the Jain tradition. Mere mortification has no meaning for them. The mortification is to be followed by what you could call is the enlightenment.
In the Indian tradition, deities of all faiths are adored. They are treated with reverence and fondness. They are given ritual baths and offered fresh flowers and fruit. The tradition finds its most exuberant expression in the grand Mahamastak Abhishekha of the colossal Gomateshwara statue. From extreme asceticism to the grand celebration of divinity, the aim is always to lose mundane attachments and desires, to lose oneself in a quest for the realization of the divinity which pervades all of creation.
By the 5th century, Brihad, or large, awesome figures, began to be made in the Buddhist caves of Maharashtra and in the Hindu cave of Elephanta. The tradition spread very soon, and soon you had Kashmiri artists making Brihad figures on the road between Srinagar and Ladakh. And the tradition moved on to Bamiyan and so many other places, then on the Silk Route. And here you see a great manifestation of the Brihad figure in the Jain tradition in the end of the 10th century. The end of the 10th century is the same time when in the Hindu tradition, the great Brihadishvara temple was also being made at Thanjavur, which was then the tallest temple in India and perhaps one of the tallest structures in the world. And we saw also the puja, the adoration of the Gomateshwara statue. Now, in the old days, the word puja used to be mistranslated as prayer. Actually, puja means adoration. Adoration of the deity with flowers, with so many things, with milk, with all that we consider beautiful. We adore the deities. The deities who are finally manifestations of the qualities and ideas within us. And it is this adoration which is such a beautiful part of all the faiths in the Indian tradition. And the greatest example that I have seen of such adoration, the grandest example rather, is at Shravanabelagola in the Mahamastak Abhishek, which takes place once in 12 years. It was quite an experience being there. I think it was probably 2006. And thank you very much, Sunil, for an excellent screening. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd be very happy to answer a few questions if you have. You could put them in the chat box and Sujata will read them out to me. Thank you.
Before that, I'd like to inform all of you of our next screening, which is on Saturday, October 26th. The film is Konarak, the Sun God's Chariot, about one of the grandest and largest temples ever to be made in India. So please mark it in your calendars. We'd love for all of you to be here with us. 26th October, Saturday, same time.
Yes, this time in September we don't have a screening, which is unusual. But that is because on the 21st and 22nd of September, I'm giving an in-person concise course in Indian art, history and appreciation on behalf of India Habitat Center. Those of you who are in Delhi are so welcome to please come. You could be in touch either with me or with India Habitat Center for the registration.
Anand Bharve, that's a comment saying thanks, Benoy Ji, for bringing out similarities within diversity. He's commenting from Washington, D.C.
Thank you so much, Anand.
The next one doesn't have a name, it's a PAM and a number. Benoy, in your introduction, you mentioned that temples were built around the same time in different locations. You referred to a specific location in connection with Himachal Pradesh. Would you please remind us of this?
Yes, Pam, I was talking about the very large rock-cut shrines which were being hewn out of the living hill in the 8th century. And there I'd spoken about this happening in Tamil Nadu and this happening at Ellora in Maharashtra. And the third place I'd mentioned was Masroor in Himachal Pradesh, where a temple with 5 towers was carved right out of the mountain, right out of the hill in the 8th century. And this was a precursor to the temple with 5 towers, which you see later in Angkor Wat. Thank you very much.
Jilmin, what was the philosophy behind the Brahad statues?
Jilmil, the grandeur of what is inside us is in fact so much greater and more eloquent than all the grandeur of the material world. So that is what is being presented here, that the Buddha figure or the Shiva at Elephanta or the Gomateshwara for the Jains, these are in fact grand. It is that which is divine within us, which is finally the grandest of all and is therefore being made large for us. Thank you.
Krishna Bulli, Benoy, it is a divine celebration when we look at the cosmic beauty with detachment. Build your reality inwards without attachment with existing knowledge and skills.
Yes, Krishna, that is so beautifully said. And the Jains also particularly went along these lines. Their abstract purity is yet so beautiful. Thank you, Krishna.
Pia, this is a comment. Thank you for this wonderful film. Having visited some of these temples in Odisha many years ago, I feel today I return to these temples again. Thank you.
Thank you, Pia. I'm so glad that these temples have made such an impact on you. I hope you enjoy your visit very much.
Krishna Bodle, seeking divine from smallest of small to biggest of big is powerful.
Very well said, Krishna. Thank you so much. Truly, this is the divinity that is to be found in all that there is. And by finding divinity there, we are recognizing the divine which is everywhere and finally inside us. Thank you, Krishna.
John Palka, Benoy K, the external sculptures of all these glorious temples are exposed stone. Our experience with the Meenakshi temple in Madurai was that in 1961, the sculptures were exposed stone. But in 1965, at least all the gopurams had been elaborately painted. What was the original surface like?
Thank you, John, for this very important question. Originally, the temples and the temple walls and the sculptures were covered with plaster and painted. We have got used to seeing most early sculptures as bare stone because the plaster and paint have come off. So there are just some examples of surviving plaster and paint at places like the great Kailashnatha temple at Kanchipuram, or in fact the Kailashnatha temple at Ellora. But yes, originally they were all plastered and painted, and that has come off in most cases. Thank you, John.
Debatuti Banerjee, thanks for the highly informative presentation. Who vandalized the Kichakeshwari temple and why?
Debatuti, thank you for this question. I'm so sorry, but I'm not sure of why that temple collapsed. I just know that the temple had collapsed and that it was rebuilt in the early 20th century. And how beautiful the sculptures are. It is truly, it is one of the gems of sculpture. Thank you.
I'd like to share, somebody saying, Philip, saying thank you for this wonderful short film.
My pleasure, Philip. Thank you.
Debatuti saying thank you. And would you like to share with the group about our YouTube channel in case they want to see the earlier films that we put up?
Yes, in case you want to see the sequence of earlier films which have been shown, there is the YouTube channel after my own name, Benoy K Behl. You could see that. Thank you.
I think that's about it. There don't seem to be any more questions. So we would like to say goodbye.
It's been a great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. I look forward very much to sharing again with you on the 26th of October. My many thanks to India Habitat Center and to Sunil again. Thank you.